Recognizable at the end. Emaciated, broken, all who watched it will be slow to forget the CCTV footage.
And the Prime Minister sent a letter to all members of Parliament explaining it. This judgment is the unanimous judgment of all 11 justices. The first question is whether the lawfulness of the Prime Minister's to Her Majesty is justiciable. The court exercised a supervisory jurisdiction over the lawfulness of acts of the government for centuries.
The entire United Kingdom is reeling from a political earthquake. The Supreme Court has just delivered a brutal, devastating blow to Keir Starmer and his secretive agenda to drag Britain back into the grip of the European Union. In a shocking and unprecedented ruling, the highest court in the land has struck down Starmer's covert EU alignment plan, a plan hidden from the public, concealed from Parliament and buried beneath layers of diplomatic jargon and legal trickery. This isn't just a technical legal defeat. This is a total humiliation, a destruction of credibility so complete that it threatens to tear the Labour Party apart from the inside. Across Westminster, panic has erupted. Labour MPs are in chaos. Furious demands for Starmer's resignation are echoing through the halls of power. What began as quiet whispers about backroom EU dealings has exploded into the open, with Starmer now fully exposed as the architect of a plan that the British people never agreed to and that Parliament never approved. The Supreme Court's ruling has not only crushed his secret project, it has lit the fuse on a political time bomb that could blow up his entire career. For months, the public knew something wasn't right. Keir Starmer, the man who once stood before voters promising to respect Brexit and uphold the democratic will of the 2016 referendum, was quietly changing his tune. Behind carefully chosen words like pragmatic cooperation and economic partnership was a far more dangerous truth. A secret plan to realign Britain with the European Union. Starmer's inner circle had been working in the shadows, far away from Parliament's oversight, crafting an elaborate scheme to reconnect the UK to Brussels rules, without a single vote, without open debate, and without the public ever knowing. And now that hidden plan has come crashing down in flames. The Supreme Court's ruling is nothing short of catastrophic for Starmer. The judges made clear that his government's attempt to sneak new EU regulations into British law was illegal, unconstitutional, and a betrayal of the democratic process. According to court documents, Starmer's team tried to bypass Parliament entirely, using executive orders and obscure administrative procedures to tie Britain back into the EU's system of trade rules, environmental laws, and regulatory agencies. This was no accident, no harmless misunderstanding. This was a deliberate effort to quietly undo the result of Brexit, a result that millions of British people voted for, fought for, and demanded be respected. Legal experts have described the ruling as historic and devastating, setting a clear precedent that no future government can make such sweeping changes to the nation's legal and trade framework without full parliamentary approval. Starmer's defence, that this was merely about cooperation and stability, was utterly rejected. The court saw through the spin, calling his actions a dangerous overreach of executive power and a violation of the constitutional limits on the Prime Minister's authority. One justice, according to insiders, even described the government's behaviour as something more fitting for an authoritarian state than a modern British democracy. But the true scale of the disaster is only now becoming clear. As soon as the verdict was announced, political shockwaves ripped through Westminster. Opposition leaders wasted no time pouncing on Starmer's defeat. Nigel Farage, long a critic of Starmer's EU sympathies, declared the ruling a total victory for British democracy and accused the Labour leader of betraying the country's sovereignty in secret. Reform UK issued a furious statement, warning that this exposed Starmer's hidden plan to reverse Brexit without the courage to admit it to voters. Even senior Conservative MPs, smelling blood in the water, joined the attack, one declaring that Starmer was a lawyer who thought he could rewrite the law to suit himself, but had now been caught and crushed by the very system he swore to uphold. Yet perhaps the most shocking reaction came from within Labour itself. Reports began leaking within hours of the verdict, reports of panic, anger, and chaos at the top of the party. Sources close to the shadow cabinet revealed that many MPs had been kept entirely in the dark about Starmer's EU realignment plan. Some were furious, claiming they had trusted Starmer's leadership only to find out they had been misled. Labour backbenchers, especially those from Leave-voting constituencies in the Midlands and the North, were described as apoplectic, demanding answers, demanding accountability, and some even demanding Starmer's resignation. Inside Labour HQ, the mood was said to be near mutiny. furious debates broke out as advisers scrambled to contain the fallout. Who had pushed this EU strategy? Who had designed this secret plan? And why had the rest of the party been left blind to the coming disaster? No one seemed to have the answers, but everyone agreed on one thing: the damage was done. The Supreme Court's ruling had blown apart not just Starmer's policy, but the illusion that his leadership was steady, transparent, and trustworthy. It's a betrayal many MPs now fear could destroy their own chances of re-election. Already, nervous Labour officials have reported frantic phone calls from local party leaders in Leave areas, terrified that this scandal will drive voters away in droves. In key battleground regions, where Labour hoped to win back working-class support, the reaction has been furious. Constituents are demanding to know why the party they trusted has been caught secretly trying to drag Britain closer to the EU. The sense of betrayal is deep. The sense of anger is rising. As the dust began to settle from the Supreme Court's explosive ruling, the impact on Keir Starmer's fragile leadership became impossible to ignore. Westminster, usually a place of controlled whispers and quiet plotting, descended into open panic and rebellion. Labour MPs, shocked by the scale of the defeat, began breaking ranks. Some did so privately, furious texts and phone calls exchanged late into the night, demanding to know how they had been dragged into such a catastrophic scandal without warning. But others went public, their frustration boiling over in furious interviews and anonymous briefings to the press. One senior Labour backbencher, speaking to The Telegraph under condition of anonymity, called the verdict the worst day for Labour since the Corbyn years, and blasted Starmer as arrogant, secretive, and now completely discredited. Another warned that the party was on the verge of civil war, with Leave-backing MPs in the north threatening to resign the whip if Starmer remained leader. Even loyalists struggled to defend him. Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, gave a disastrous interview to Sky News where she repeatedly dodged questions about whether she had known of the secret EU plan. Her stumbling performance sent Labour's poll numbers plunging overnight, as furious voters vented their outrage on social media. At Starmer resign trended #1 on Twitter by morning, as clips of angry Labour voters, many of them former Brexit supporters, who had switched to Labour in 2019, circulated widely. The message was clear. They felt lied to, betrayed, and abandoned by the very man they had been told would make Brexit work. In number 10, Rishi Sunak's government wasted no time capitalising on Starmer's agony. The Prime Minister took the extraordinary step of addressing Parliament directly, declaring the Supreme Court's ruling as a victory for the sovereignty of the British people, and warning that Labour could no longer be trusted to defend Brexit. The leader of the opposition has been caught red-handed, Sunak thundered from the dispatch box, trying to undo the settled will of the British electorate in secret. This is not leadership, it is deception. Tory MPs roared their approval, banging the benches in triumph. Across the aisle, Labour frontbenchers sat in stunned, miserable silence, as Starmer himself avoided eye contact with his colleagues and buried his face in his notes. But the true disaster was only beginning to unfold beyond the walls of Westminster. In Leave-voting heartlands, places like Sunderland, Stoke, Doncaster, the reaction was sheer fury. Local Labour councillors received an avalanche of emails and phone calls from furious constituents. In Wigan, a town Labour once counted as a fortress, protesters gathered outside the constituency office waving banners reading "Starmer traitor" and "Hands off Brexit." On Facebook, angry posts accused the Labour leader of plotting to sell out the country's sovereignty for the benefit of Brussels bureaucrats. One furious voter from Grimsby posted a viral video, his face red with anger, demanding to know why Labour MPs had let this man con us all and promising to switch to Reform UK at the next election. Nigel Farage, sensing political blood in the water, seized the moment with ruthless glee. At a hastily called press conference, Farage denounced Starmer as the greatest threat to British democracy since Edward Heath, and promised that Reform UK would launch a full-scale campaign to hold Labour to account. The British people voted to leave the European Union, Farage declared, and yet here is Starmer, caught in the act of trying to drag us back in through the back door. This is betrayal on a grand scale. And make no mistake, the voters will not forgive. His words lit up the right-wing press, with headlines screaming of treason in Labour and Brexit under attack. But while the Tories and Reform UK celebrated, Labour's crisis only deepened. In secret meetings at Labour HQ, furious discussions broke out over Starmer's future. A group of Northern Labour MPs reportedly confronted Starmer's team, demanding an explanation and warning that unless Starmer issued a full public apology, or better yet resigned, they would quit the party and stand as independents. "We were promised transparency," one angry MP reportedly shouted. Instead, we got lies. This is unforgivable. Party donors too began to panic. Rumours swirled that several major Labour funders had called the party's finance office, threatening to pull their support unless the leadership crisis was resolved swiftly. The Times reported that one key donor called the situation a disaster for Labour's credibility, and warned that businesses would not back a party seen as willing to defy both the law and the public on Brexit. The shadow cabinet was fracturing under the strain, with whispers that figures like Angela Rayner and Yvette Cooper were quietly canvassing support for a potential leadership bid should Starmer fall. And in the middle of this political storm stood Keir Starmer himself, his once iron grip on the party now slipping fast. Colleagues described him as dazed, bewildered, and visibly shaken in private meetings. Insiders leaked stories of a leader pacing his office late into the night, agonising over what to do. Some aides reportedly urged him to apologise and fight on. Others warned that the damage was terminal, that the voters would never trust him again after this act of betrayal had been dragged into the light by the highest court in the land. Outside in the real world, the political earth continued to shake. Opinion polls conducted in the hours after the ruling showed Labour's support collapsing in key battlegrounds. Reform UK surged into second place in the red wall seats, while the Tories pulled ahead in the south. A snap poll by YouGov found that 62% of voters now believed Starmer should resign, a staggering figure for a leader who only weeks ago seemed set to cruise into Downing Street. Commentators on every channel asked the same question. Was this the scandal that would end Keir Starmer's career forever? Even Buckingham Palace was reportedly closely monitoring the situation. Rumours swirled that King Charles was deeply disturbed by the constitutional implications of Starmer's actions, and that palace officials had quietly warned Downing Street of royal concern over the erosion of parliamentary sovereignty. It was an astonishing twist in the unfolding disaster. The monarchy itself worried that the constitutional order might be crumbling under Labour's secret EU ambitions. And yet, as night fell on Westminster, there was no resolution, only dread. Starmer's team remained silent. No apology, no explanation, no plan. Inside Parliament, rivals plotted. Outside in the country, voters seethed. And in every newsroom, every boardroom, every government office in the land, the same thought echoed. How much longer could Keir Starmer survive this unprecedented political catastrophe? As the hours turned into days, the chaos surrounding Keir Starmer's leadership showed no signs of fading. Instead, it grew darker, deeper, and far more dangerous than anyone inside Labour headquarters could have feared. With every passing moment, the foundations of Starmer's political survival cracked a little more, as secret plots, betrayals, and open mutiny inside his own party erupted into public view. What started as a legal defeat in the Supreme Court now became something far worse, a total political meltdown threatening to destroy Starmer's career, Labour's future, and the fragile trust of millions of British voters. The rebellion inside the Labour Party reached its boiling point on the third day after the verdict. A group of 12 senior Labour MPs, led by figures once considered Starmer's closest allies, marched into his office, demanding a face-to-face meeting. What was said behind those closed doors was only hinted at by leaks to the media, but insiders described the scene as brutal and unprecedented. One MP reportedly shouted, "You've cost us the election," while another furiously accused Starmer of treating both Parliament and the public with contempt. A leaked text from one of the MPs read, "This ends now. Either he resigns or we bring him down ourselves." The BBC's political editor revealed that plans were being drawn up for a formal vote of no confidence against Starmer by his own MPs, the first such challenge since the dark days of Jeremy Corbyn's doomed leadership. Shadow cabinet members who had previously stood loyally by Starmer began to waver. Angela Rayner, usually fiercely protective of the leader in public, was seen leaving the private meeting pale and tight-lipped, refusing to answer any questions from the gathered press pack. Meanwhile, Yvette Cooper, long seen as a potential leadership rival, was overheard whispering to an aide, "If he goes, I'm ready." The press smelled blood. Every newspaper, from the Times to the Guardian, ran front-page stories titled "Labour in Revolt" and "Starmer's Final Hours." Political commentators declared Starmer's leadership mortally wounded, predicting that unless he delivered a resignation by the weekend, the party itself would tear him apart. Channel 4 ran a special documentary titled "The Fall of Starmer," examining the Supreme Court scandal in grim detail, replaying again and again the words of the court's damning judgment, that Starmer had acted against the sovereign will of the British people and had lied to both Parliament and the public. The damage to his image was total, and in the country beyond London, the anger turned white hot. Protest movements sprang up overnight, organised by furious Brexit voters and Reform UK activists. Outside Labour constituency offices across the Midlands and the North, angry crowds gathered, chanting "Resign, Starmer" and waving Union Jacks. A dramatic scene unfolded in Hartlepool, where over 200 protesters blocked the high street, holding banners that read, "We voted Leave, not to be betrayed and stop the EU sellout." Videos of the protests went viral on TikTok and Facebook, racking up millions of views. One elderly protester tearfully told a reporter, "I trusted Labour my whole life, never again. He's betrayed us all." Even more shocking was the intervention of King Charles himself, a development unseen in modern British politics. Buckingham Palace released an extraordinary statement, carefully worded but unmistakable in its meaning. The statement said the King was gravely concerned by the revelations about Labour's secret EU alignment plan, and that the integrity of Parliament's sovereign role must be respected without deception or manipulation. Though couched in constitutional language, the message was clear. The monarch himself was deeply disturbed by Starmer's betrayal. Political historians called it the most direct royal warning to a party leader since Edward VIII. The international reaction added further humiliation. EU officials in Brussels, desperate to distance themselves from the scandal, declared that they had never formally discussed any secret plan with Starmer or his team, leaving Labour's leadership looking even more isolated and dishonest. The French newspaper Le Monde ran a scathing headline, "British Labour's self-destruction," while Germany's Der Spiegel mocked Starmer as the man who promised Brexit, but plotted the opposite. Across Europe, Starmer became a political pariah, untrusted by both Brussels and by British voters. Back in Westminster, the Labour Party's civil war spilled into the open. In a shocking move, 3 junior shadow ministers resigned on live TV, holding an impromptu press conference on College Green. One of them, a young MP from Yorkshire, declared, "I cannot serve under a leader who betrays the trust of the British people. We campaigned on a promise to honour Brexit. That promise has been broken. I resign in shame." Their tearful resignation sent shockwaves through the party. Labour's chief whip was bombarded with resignation threats. One MP texted a journalist, "It's over. He won't last another week." Meanwhile, Nigel Farage fanned the flames of Labour's destruction with ruthless skill. Speaking to supporters in Birmingham, Farage declared, "We are witnessing the collapse of Labour as a credible party. They promised Brexit. They plotted to kill it. This is treason, and they must pay the price at the ballot box. Reform UK is ready. The red wall will turn blue or reform red. Labour is finished." His speech triggered raucous applause and fresh panic among Labour MPs in the North, many of whom now feared they would lose their seats to Reform or the Tories. Amid this growing crisis, Keir Starmer remained silent. No press conference, no statement. Only a few cryptic words from an exhausted-looking aide. The leader is considering his position. Rumours swirled that he was locked in meetings with legal advisors and political strategists, desperately trying to devise a survival plan. But few believed such a plan could exist. The court ruling, the palace's warning, the public fury, the party rebellion, all pointed in one terrible direction. Starmer's leadership was doomed. As Friday dawned, the pressure reached its peak. A senior Labour source leaked to the Daily Mail that a letter demanding Starmer's resignation, signed by over 60 Labour MPs, was being prepared and could be delivered within hours. If this happened, Starmer would be the first Labour leader in history to be formally ousted by his own MPs during an election run-up. Panic swept Labour HQ. Some staff packed personal items, fearing the leadership's fall was imminent. Others wept openly in the corridors. And so, as the nation held its breath, the unthinkable seemed closer than ever. The once untouchable Keir Starmer, brought to ruin not by the Tories, not by Reform UK, but by his own secret ambition and betrayal. Exposed by the highest court in the land, condemned by the Crown itself, abandoned by his party, and despised by the very people he had promised to serve. As the tension reached unbearable levels in Westminster, all eyes were fixed on one man, Keir Starmer. The corridors of Parliament buzzed with speculation. Media vans lined the streets, and journalists frantically typed updates on their phones, waiting for the moment the Labour leader would finally break his silence. But what shocked everyone was not a speech, nor a resignation letter, nor a desperate plea to hold on to power. Instead, an anonymous leak landed in the inboxes of every major newspaper editor in London. A secret memo from inside Labour headquarters that set the political world on fire. The document revealed internal polling, commissioned by Starmer's own team just days before the Supreme Court ruling. The results were catastrophic. Labour's support in the so-called Red Wall seats, those heartlands that Starmer had promised to win back from the Conservatives, had collapsed by nearly 20 points. Worse still, the memo admitted that trust in Starmer personally had hit a historic low, with voters branding him dishonest, untrustworthy, and a liar on Brexit. The most chilling line in the leaked report read, "If a general election were held today, Labour would face wipeout in the North and Midlands." The leak destroyed what little hope remained among Starmer's inner circle. Senior aides, who had until now insisted he could survive the storm, began to accept the inevitable. One top strategist told The Guardian, "This is the end. You can't lead a party into an election when the country sees you as a traitor." Calls from backbench MPs demanding Starmer's immediate resignation multiplied by the hour. WhatsApp groups of Labour MPs, once filled with election plans, became battlegrounds of fury and blame. Meanwhile, outside the political bubble, the public's rage exploded. Thousands of furious voters gathered in central London, blocking roads and demanding Starmer's resignation. Protest signs read, "Liar Starmer out," and "No EU betrayal." Union Jack flags waved above the angry crowd, as chants echoed through Westminster, "He must go, he must go." Police presence doubled, fearing the protests could turn violent. In cities like Manchester and Newcastle, similar protests erupted. Disillusioned working-class voters, once Labour's base, marched against the very party they had supported for decades. But the final blow came from an unexpected source. A televised address from Nigel Farage, broadcast live on GB News, delivered the coup de grace. Standing before a sea of cheering supporters, Farage thundered, "This man deceived Britain. He promised to honour Brexit and plotted to betray it behind closed doors. The court has exposed him, the king has warned him, his party has abandoned him, and now the people rise against him. Keir Starmer, you cannot survive this. You must resign." Farage's words lit social media on fire. Millions shared the clip. Starmer out trended at #1 on X for the next 48 hours. Even mainstream Labour voters voiced their disgust. In a viral video, a lifelong Labour supporter from Sheffield said tearfully, "I voted Labour for 40 years, but this is too much. He lied to us. I'll never vote for them again." Inside 10 Downing Street, Rishi Sunak watched the chaos unfold with quiet satisfaction. Though he remained publicly silent, senior Tory ministers privately rejoiced at Labour's destruction. "The election is ours to lose now," one minister whispered to a journalist. Reform UK strategists, meanwhile, predicted they would win seats they had never dared dream of, perhaps enough to hold the balance of power in the next parliament. And yet, as the hours dragged on, Starmer still refused to speak. His official spokesperson gave only a brief, tense statement. The leader is considering his position carefully, but everyone knew what this meant. He was trapped. If he stayed, his MPs would overthrow him. If he resigned, his political career, the dream of becoming Prime Minister, would die forever. By midnight, rumours swirled that a resignation announcement was being prepared. Labour HQ was dark, the staff long gone. Only a handful of senior figures remained, meeting in hushed tones, as the final chapter of Keir Starmer's leadership was written in secret. As dawn broke over Westminster, the political landscape stood forever changed. Keir Starmer's silence spoke louder than any words. His leadership, once seen as Labour's great hope, now lay in ruins, shattered by court rulings, party rebellion, and public fury. The calls for his resignation have become deafening. The nation watches, holding its breath. Will Starmer step down with dignity, or will he be dragged out by his own party? What do you think? Has Keir Starmer's political career reached its final chapter, or is there still a twist no one sees coming? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you.